So this is a requested video going over what are the best guns to use inside Rogue Company at the moment. Now this is likely to change as they continue to add guns or adjust weapons as well, so definitely keep that in mind going into the future. But like I said, we're going to be going over what are the best guns right now, and if you do enjoy Rogue Company content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we try to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers, and click that link in the description and subscribe to our main channel if you do like seeing Warzone content as well. But like I said, this video is just going to be going over all these weapons, putting them into this tier list. So God tier is going to be the best weapons, viable are guns that are really good but have maybe one or two drawbacks to them, decent weapons will be guns you can use but won't be as competitive as the top two, and then trash are going to be just guns I would not recommend using at all. So the Aaron, in my opinion, is trash. It's a marksman rifle. It's got the scope on it, which kind of makes it harder to kind of control the recoil a little bit, in my opinion. The kind of wobble on it is a bit insane. And also it just doesn't output as much damage as some of the other marksman rifles in the game. So personally, I just don't think it's a good gun. Some people might like this, some people might not like this gun, but personally I just don't like it. The Bishop is slightly better than the Aaron. I wouldn't probably choose it if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I do think it's a little bit better, so I'll put it in decent for the time being, but definitely, once again, not one of the best marksman rifles in the game if I'm being perfectly honest. There's 100, well, it's not 100, but there's a lot of other better options out there, and the MXR is definitely a viable option. The fire rate's a lot faster. Now it does output very similar damage to the bottom two, but it has a faster fire rate, so you're actually going to land your shots a lot quicker. So MXR definitely solid. Mamba is definitely viable as well. Is the closest option you've got in the marksman rifle category to an assault rifle. So if you've got certain characters that can only use marksman rifles and sniper rifles, for example, and you do want something close to an assault rifle with that character, then the Mamba's going to kind of get you covered there. Devotion is definitely solid as well. With the Devotion as well as the next option, which is the D30 or the D3D, I think it is. Sorry, these two guns right here. Basically, if you land one single headshot, you're actually going to get a 2-shot kill instead of just a 3-shot kill if you're landing all chest shots, for example. So you do actually get a pretty fast potential for a time to kill, providing you land that headshot there, and that's why I do think these two marksman rifles are pretty solid. So definitely solid options right here when it comes to most of the marksman rifles. Next, we're moving on to kind of my favorites, which is like SMGs. So we'll cover most of them just now. So the 24S is definitely viable as well. I think when you start off with this gun, you do get a pretty small magazine, and that's kind of the reason why it's not God tier in my opinion. Definitely solid though, good SMG, more for the kind of mid-range. But definitely a good gun. Then we've got the D40. Now the D40 is absolutely god tier. This is my favorite gun to use in all of Rogue Company. If you've probably seen most of my gameplays, will probably be with this gun, and that's just because I think it's the best SMG in the game, especially for close range. You don't really need to level it up all that much. The level 2 on this gun is more than enough to get you by a full entire game, so the D40 definitely god tier. The next SMG we have is the Knight. The Knight is pretty solid again. I think it's the same issue with the 24S. It's got a small mag. Definitely still a good gun though. Absolutely you can use it, but it's nowhere near as good as the D40, just to be perfectly honest. The LMP, in my opinion, is god tier as well. I do use a lot of SMGs. I do still think the D40 is better. Personal preference there, but I do see a lot of people using the LMP and doing super well with it as well, and I've used it myself and it's a really good gun, more kind of in that mid-range as well compared to the D40. So if you're more aggressive, D40. If you like those kind of mid-range gunfights, LMP. The next SMG we have is the Objection. Viable again just because it's an SMG, to be perfectly honest with you. Not one I would personally choose, but definitely a solid gun overall. But like I said, it's not the best SMG in the game. The SLC is another SMG again, and I do think this is top tier, god tier even. And I do think once you get this gun leveled up, is an absolute laser beam. It's basically like a super fast fire rate assault rifle, really good at long range, actually really good at long range, and it just puts the heart on your opponents, especially in those long distances like I said, but also you can use it at close range as well because it's an SMG. So overall it's actually a very well balanced weapon, so I do think it's super solid. Next we're moving on to shotguns. Personally, I do think some of the shotguns are really good right now. The Arbitrator is absolutely god tier, and I think it's also balanced as well. People might not like the shotguns in this game, thinking they're not so balanced, but I do think the Arbitrator is balanced, even though it's pretty much always a 2-shot kill at close range, which is pretty solid, man. And if you use it with Scorch as well, that is going to be an absolutely ridiculous combo, to be perfectly honest. But when you use the Arbitrator with Scorch, it's pretty powerful. But on top of that, if you just use it with any other character, it's always a 2-shot kill. And you only get 2 bullets in the magazine anyway, or 2 shells, whatever you want to call it, 2 pellets. And that kind of what makes it balanced overall. So once you kill an opponent, you do need to reload after that. So definitely that's what makes it kind of balanced overall. Then we have the SKL, and I do think the SKL is also a god tier shotgun. It's got a bigger mag, so you've got more margin for error, but it does do less damage than the Arbitrator. But the fire rate on this gun is very, very solid. If you do like a shotgun and you're kind of like a beginner to Rogue Company, the SKL is probably going to be your best friend, to be perfectly honest. So if you do like shotguns, I do think the SKL is probably the better option out of the bunch. When it comes to the Striker is a viable gun for sure. You can use it, not probably one of the better shotguns, and probably not as good as the SMGs that are in this category at the moment, but you can definitely use it and do well with it. In my personal opinion, you do get a pretty large mag on it too, which helps out a ton. And then the last shotgun is a tactical shotgun, and again, it's kind of in that between viable and decent, to be perfectly honest. Not one of my favorite shotguns to use. I'll pretty much put it in decent for now, so I don't think it's as good as a Striker, but again, it's going to probably you could probably put it in viable if you really do like this gun, but personally I just don't like it all that much. Now we're going to move on to LMGs, because there's only 2, and I do think the Maw is the viable option. So if you do like LMGs and you have a character that pretty much only has LMGs, then use the Maw. The Conviction I don't really think is all that good, but it's still viable because it's a fully automatic gun. I do think that if you do have any other options like a kind of marksman rifle or SMG, you should be choosing those instead, because the LMGs have a ton of weapon bloom. So even though they have kind of big mags and they output a ton of damage, the shots might not be landing exactly where you want them to. So the initial kind of stages of these LMGs kind of have a lot of weapon bloom. So it's kind of the reason why I don't really use LMGs all that often. Now we're going to move into the sniper rifles, and to be perfectly honest, I think both of the sniper rifles are really good. I think both of them are kind of god tier, if I'm being perfectly honest. I know some people like the full body more than the TYR, but I've used both, and I do think they're really good sniper rifles. You get pretty much a 1-hit down on the headshots, and they're both a 2-hit down if you land chest shots. So again, solid options. The full body I think has a little bit of a larger magazine compared to the TYR, so if you do like to fire off a lot of shots, then the full body is probably going to be the better option for you. Moving on into assault rifles now, which is probably, I'd say, the most popular category for most beginners, because you get that balance of having a decent-ish close range gun, but also mainly for those kind of mid-range gunfights is where you should be using your assault rifles. So the 30KS is definitely viable, super solid option. I'd probably put it at the top end of viable for sure. The Hydra, in my opinion, is absolutely god tier. This gun outputs an absolute ton of damage. I think that you need to land like 3 or 4 bullets and you've downed an opponent. The fire rate is a little bit slower, but absolutely a god tier gun for sure. We've got the KA-30, which I think is also god tier. This is probably the most balanced assault rifle in the game, so if you do like something that's just kind of low recoil, you can fire a lot of bullets down range, you can land your shots, KA-30 solid as well. The Mark IV, I can kind of put in between viable and god tier. It's kind of the lower end of god tier in my opinion. Again, similar to the KA-30, but just doesn't quite hit as hard. But it is super low recoil once you get it leveled up. Nightshade is viable. It's probably kind of the lower end of viable in my opinion, just above the LMGs. Because it's kind of more like an SMG assault rifle, and if that's the case, you might as well be using an SMG. And to be fair, you should probably be using some of the other assault rifles over it anyway. I know they've kind of made it like an aggressive assault rifle option, but I just don't think it's that good, to be perfectly honest with you. The Riptide is a slightly better version of the Nightshade, so if you do want an aggressive SMG or an aggressive AR option that's kind of similar to an SMG, the Riptide is probably going to be the better one. So I definitely recommend using that instead. It's got a super fast fire rate, solid gun. The Sahara, it's got a slow fire rate, and it's not quite as good as the Hydra in my opinion. So again, I'm going to put it in the upper end of viable, but I do think the Riptide is kind of like that SMG hybrid if you're looking for one. And the KA-30, the Hydra, and the Mark IV are definitely the best 3 assault rifles that we've got available. Now, moving on to the pistols or sidearms, what we want to call it, and this is kind of a really important factor you need to consider when choosing your characters as well, because you can't change your weapons when it comes to the sidearms in the game. So you do need to make sure you're choosing a character that's got a sidearm that you like as well. And when it comes to the sidearms, the Spitfire is absolutely god tier, is the best secondary weapon in the game, hands down, without a doubt. If you've got this gun leveled up to like level 3, it's basically an SMG, to be fair. So definitely god tier. I pretty much always choose characters that have the Spitfire pistol when I can. The salvo, again, it can be in between viable and god tier. If you've got a character that's got the salvo, then you're kind of still doing pretty well. It's a burst fire pistol, super solid option, just nowhere near as good as a Spitfire, but definitely solid as well. When it comes to the rest of the pistols, the Executioner is viable in my opinion. The P12 is decent. The Revolver is decent, and the Warrant is kind of decent as well. Definitely, I'd probably choose them over the Aaron if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But I do think that the Revolver's got just such a slow fire rate, it just doesn't allow it to be good as a secondary weapon. The kind of whole point in a secondary weapon is that you swap it out when you're ready to finish someone off if you've run out of ammo in your primary weapon. And especially if you pair this with like something like a shotgun, for example, or maybe like an LMG character. So someone like Cannon, for example, you're really at a disadvantage having like an LMG and a shotgun with a revolver pistol. It's kind of going to put you off a lot. P12 just doesn't hit hard enough, to be perfectly honest with you, and the same with the Warrant as well. So if you're definitely going for like secondary weapons, go for characters that have got either the Spitfire or the Salvo. You'll do definitely really well. But that is the tier list. There's probably not a lot of trash weapons because, to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of these guns are very well balanced inside Rogue Company at the moment. So if you do enjoy using any of these viable options, definitely continue to use them. They are super solid guns. I just probably wouldn't use anything below viable, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I'd probably drop down the LMGs if I was being perfectly honest, but if you've got a character that only has LMGs and maybe the secondary is a shotgun and you want to use something more long range, then you'd probably need to use the LMGs anyway, so that's why I left them a little bit higher up on the list. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Rogue Company content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we try to reach that goal of 10k subscribers. Click the link in the description and subscribe to our second channel, and thank you very much for watching.